The Last Meal of Johnny Fortune by Charlotte Bond. It had not been a good night for Johnny Fortune. The landlady of the King's Head in Ayrton had offered him a warm meal and a warmer bed for the night. Johnny needed to save the money from his last robbery to buy drinks at the inns he encountered. At an inn, you might meet a rich merchant who could be robbed when they stumbled home, or listen to the servants of great houses who might let slip a back way into rich plunder. But not 10 minutes after closing, the landlady's husband came bursting through the door, apparently outraged at the scene before him. The drink Johnny had already consumed on an empty stomach had made him sluggish, and he had only just managed to escape a serious beating. They'd taken his pack with the last of his coin, but he still had his coat, in the pocket of which was a pasty he'd stolen when the landlady's back was turned. It wasn't much, but it was something. Now he found himself trudging country lanes. The beer sloshed so uncomfortably in his guts that he leaned over a ditch and vomited it all up. That made his belly emptier, but his head clearer. What he needed was safe shelter from this biting November wind. The ditch was too shallow and had a thin layer of water in it, so Johnny carried on until he came to a sign that said Kirby Malham. There were no lights on in the windows and no convenient outbuildings. There might be some barns in one of the surrounding fields, but the moonlight was too patchy to see very far. And then he glanced up and saw his salvation, a church spire. A church meant a graveyard, which meant headstones, maybe even a crypt, to keep off the worst of the wind. Feeling as if his luck might be turning, Johnny hurried in that direction. When he reached the graveyard, he was shocked to discover a stone table with a sumptuous feast placed upon it. For a man with an empty belly, it was a glimpse of heaven. There were huge tureens of steaming soup, roasted meats, pale parsnips and golden carrots, a delicate pink tower of fresh prawns, and ices that glistened like jewels. Johnny glanced around warily. He knew the rich held strange and lavish parties, but where were the guests or the servants? Yet sense and reason were eroded by the delicious smells reaching him on the breeze. Johnny decided that he should take what he could while no one was here. As he kept closer, the tantalizing smells intensified. When he reached the table, his stomach pangs caused him to sink onto a grassy mound, one of many set around the table like stools. Beside him, a voice said, "Welcome to my table, Johnny Fortune." Sitting at the head of the table, in a place that had been empty a heartbeat before, was a well-dressed man. His lithe figure spoke of wiry muscle, while his smile suggested welcome. His eyes glittered with malice. His eyes. Johnny knew of only one creature who had the eyes of a goat. "You're the devil!" Lucifer smiled. "Indeed, I am." Johnny tried to get up, but it was as if invisible hands tethered him to the mound. "What is this?" "No man may leave my table unseated. Not unless I permit him, or unless he breaks the curse." "What curse?" "Ask them," Lucifer said, gesturing to the empty seats that were now filled with phantoms. Every kind of death imaginable was on display, from the pox to drowning, hanging to old age. Johnny was no stranger to corpses, but seeing so many dead all together and staring at him made his skin crawl. He turned beseechingly to the devil. "I don't want to be here, sir. I am a good man." The devil's laugh echoed in the cold night. "A good man? You?" He leaned forward. "If I thought you were a good man, I would not invite you to break the bread with me. But as it is," he leaned back, making an expansive gesture, "help yourself." Johnny looked longingly at the spread before him. "You've poisoned it, haven't you?" he said morosely. "Far from it. Everything you see before you is succulent and harmless. Here, let me show you." Lucifer picked up a silver spoon and broke the crust of a plum crumble. Steam and sweetness rose into the night. The devil chewed his mouthful contentedly. See, nothing to fear. Johnny's stomach was an aching void. He snatched up a spoon and dug it into the crumble. But as the mouthful was halfway to his lips, the devil added, Of course, should you eat anything from this table, you will be food yourself for those sitting around it. Johnny froze, the silver spoon so close to his lips he could smell the richness of the fruit. But he could see how hungrily the ghost crowd looked at him. Slowly, he put the spoon down. The devil grinned. Shame. The following hours were torture. Johnny had never been one to deny himself while temptation was before him, whether it was food, women, or money. But now, with his stomach shriveled and aching, he had to watch while the devil sampled one delicacy after another. From crisp apples to wobbling jellies, from sizzling pork to the lightest of flummeries, Johnny watched each morsel pitifully. Just one bite, or a sip of wine, pleaded part of his mind. But another part whispered, What food is worth being cursed for? Yet Johnny's body was betraying him. He was slumping forward with hunger pangs. His stomach was used to privation, but not denial. And then, oh, sweet salvation! In his pocket, he felt the bulge of the pasty he'd stolen. Johnny laughed, giddy with joy. You cannot tempt me, monster, he cried, pointing at the devil. He brandished the pastry. It crumbled in his hand, a lump of it falling onto the stone table. Flaky pastry cascaded like snow as he shook it, laughing. I've foiled you, Satan! I have my own food to fill my belly. None of your cursed muck. He took a huge bite, chewing and grinning, while his stomach rejoiced at the fulfillment of its desires. The pasty was soon devoured. John ate so fast he could barely taste the food. When it was gone, he licked the last scraps from his fingers, but his guts were begging for more. So he picked up the lump that had fallen on the table and demolished that before scavenging each tiny flake. Once that was done, he looked longingly at the rest of the feast. It still looked delicious, but with his immediate hunger sated, he felt he could bear such temptation, even if it was the ultimate misery. The devil was smiling. Words never meant much to you, did they, Johnny? Please no, or spare me, or don't hurt me. They passed you by. But the words you should have paid attention to were, should you eat anything from this table, you will become food yourself. But I never touched your food, Johnny exclaimed. But your own food fell on the table, did it not? And you picked it up from the table and ate it. Every last crumb. Dumbfounded, Johnny's gaze moved from the devil to the host of phantoms, all of whom were looking at him. Oh, Johnny, sighed Lucifer, with no regret at all. If only you'd been a good man. You might have broken the curse. But you're a blackguard, Johnny Fortune, and now you're one of the cursed. In a rush, the ghosts were on him. Johnny shrieked, his teeth made of air sank into his flesh, as his attackers ripped and tore at him. Johnny tried to fight them off. His hands passed through them like mist. The pain seemed to go on for an age. When his body was devoured and his bones had been sucked dry, the ghosts drifted away. But a throbbing ache persisted in every inch of him. The devil, who had not moved from his seat, now dabbed his mouth with a napkin and came to stand over Johnny, who could only lie there, speechless and terrified. You should consider yourself lucky, the devil remarked. Had you not wandered in here tonight, your soul would have been mine to claim for hell. Oh, the torments I had had waiting for you. His tongue ran over his gleaming teeth, and Johnny shrank back. But instead, you come here. The pain of your demise will forever remain with you, but you shall be spared any true suffering. Johnny scrambled to his feet and spread toward the lich gate, wanting to flee this terrible place, but as he reached the threshold, the air around him thickened like treacle. He tried to push his way forward, but the air held him immobile. His eyes could move through, and he saw that there were other phantoms trapped at intervals along the wall, their eyes full of despair. A hand hauled him backwards, and he fell at Lucifer's feet. The devil wiped his hand on his jacket. As I am sure you can see, if you try to leave, you will be trapped. They, he gestured to the imprisoned ghosts, did not heed my warning. But now I must leave. I hope your last meal was delicious enough to last you eternity, but I doubt it. You should have taken your fill from my table after all. At least that way you would have had a full belly. Johnny's gaze flicked anxiously towards the ghost that drifted around the graveyard. Don't worry, the devil said. The dead hold no favor for them. But you shouldn't blame them for your fate either. They have been so very, very hungry for such a long time. Lucifer grinned, as you will be. The devil's laughter rebounded through the graveyard, dragging out the agonized sobs of Johnny Fortune.